Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doug Kofer, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar entitled How to Sell in a World Adverse to Being Sold. First, let me give you a little background on the Mosconi Group, our host for today. Today's multi-channel, multicultural world has changed the way customers buy, and the Mosconi Group helps organizations turn this into a competitive advantage. They specialize in building internal employee skills, changing behaviors, and achieving measurable results for organizations interested in creating a sustainable, customer-focused organization. So if you ever find yourself frustrated by employee productivity or frustrated by sales results, Mosconi Group can definitely help change that. Our presenter today is Jeff Morris, who has 25-plus years of experience in marketing and mapping the customer experience. He is a serial entrepreneur, founding his first company in 2002, and a corporate speaker widely respected for his skills in understanding the psychology behind why your customers buy and how your employees can help you sell. He is currently working on a book, Storytelling, How to Close Sales Through the Power of Customer Experience Stories, and he'll be speaking on that today. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it off to Jeff.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. It's great to see you all online today. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit in this afternoon. We're scheduled for an hour, but we won't use all of it. So please feel free to use the messaging function on your control board there to ask questions along the way. We'll address some of those at the end. But first, let's take a look at our agenda, what we're going to be covering. Today, we're going to be going over what we call our story selling process. It's based on the fact that our experience and the experience of our clients has shown that much of what's wrong with selling today is based on kind of some flawed assumptions that we all make as business people. Then we'll talk about why those assumptions are no longer true and what the new reality is. Finally, we'll show you the steps in our story selling process and talk about how you can begin to build this in your own organization. So hundreds of books have been developed around the art of selling. Over the last nearly 30 years, I've discovered it is an art. Yet far too many companies continue to load their sales pitches with what I call the science, the facts and figures that support our benefits, but really make us virtually indistinguishable from our competitors. However, I've always preferred the sales methods that are backed by some sort of independent research that measures the effectiveness of different types of techniques, like Neil Rackham's spin selling, if you're familiar with that. I like the science of sales, just not how it's typically married to the art of selling. However, none of these methods are panacea, right? I think of them really kind of like I think of those self-help books. Every one of them has a nugget or two of information that's good for me to implement, but it's not necessarily the entire solution to all my personality flaws. So I say this because I encourage you to utilize what works best for your team, whether it's a trained system, a custom system, or some sort of hybrid. But whatever you decide to do, you do need to do the science part. You have to turn it into a system with stages and key performance metrics for each of those stages. Everyone must be singing off the same sheet of music, or it becomes really difficult to measure and improve. So that's why many of these sales methods like Sandler or Spin or others focus on the process of selling, because consistency is the key to success. They teach you the steps you need to go through the sales cycle, identifying pain points. We all recognize this or some variation of this traditional sales funnel, right? Starts with the lead generation, moves through need identification, designing the solution, proposing the solution, negotiating, closing. There are all kinds of varieties of these sales functions. Every one of them is different, but this is pretty standard for the traditional sales funnel. All of the services that we offer for our clients are not just our selling system, but our customer experience process design, our marketing strategy, other services really focus on looking at traditional business management practices from a different angle. Instead of the traditional focus on processes that address the needs of the organization, we help our clients develop processes that are based on the needs of their customers. So this is where story selling comes from, focusing your sales and marketing process on the needs of your customers. Story selling is a hybrid of many of these kind of existing sales practices. It leverages a lot of the successful processes and the different styles of solution selling. But because of this, storytelling really doesn't have to replace the system that your team has already been trained on. It's designed to be complementary to a lot of the sales processes that are out there. So, like I said in the agenda, storytelling is based on addressing what we believe to be the 4 fatal flaws of sales today. And these are assumptions that we make. For example, most solution selling today is based on the flawed assumption that customers know what they need, right? And our series of discovery questions will help them narrow that down. We just have to find their pain point, right? I think we've all seen the training. We've got to find out what it is that's bothering them the most. Sort of. I'll explain this in a minute, but the assumption that your product or service is different. It's not different in the mind of your target, unfortunately. Humans need to categorize for memory. We need to find these little cubby holes in our brain to store bits of information so they're easier for us to access when needed. Customers are the same way. They need to fit us into neat little boxes, and that's usually based on your industry. He's in marketing, or she manufactures tools. So in the real world, we like to think that we're dramatically different, but we're just kind of slightly different, and we end up blending in with a lot of our competitors out there. So the assumption that customers are buying the product. Customers aren't buying our product. They're not buying our sale or our service. They're buying you. In some cases, they're buying the brand, but in most cases, they're buying the person that's sitting across from them or has made contact with them. So your differentiation is not in your product or your service. It's in the insights that you bring. And then, assumption number 4, it's really not what you sell, it's how you sell it. Facts and figures, the idea that we can put these kind of charts and graphs up there and show what great benefits we have, that assumption is flawed. People don't remember facts and figures. They remember stories. Stories connect. People can identify with stories, and they can even picture themselves in a similar story. Not to mention, product benefits are clearer when you visualize them in action. So when you're telling a story about a client and something that you've seen occur in an industry, I'm more likely to be able to put myself into that same story. So why did we feel that this change was needed? Well, overall, our lives have changed, right? The customer, our customer expectations have changed because of this. The time we spend at work, where we work, how we communicate, how we purchase products. Thanks to the internet and what they call the information age, options are plentiful. Competition's fierce. Customer expects the best value in the shortest time frame possible, right? They don't want to wait around for things to happen. As you know from our past webinars, customer-focused companies enhance value by providing solutions that are some combination of these 3 things: products, services, and technology. But really, this adds complexity to the solution, and therefore it adds complexity to your customer's decision process. I mean, as they start to think about the things that are out there, things are far more complex. It becomes a lot more difficult for them to make a decision. So what does this kind of complexity mean? What are these changes in these solutions that we're offering that are more complex and more, based in these 3 things: these technology, product, services? What does this mean? So it means kind of some new things. Consensus is critical. It's critical to the sale. As the solutions you're providing become more complex, even key decision makers are unwilling to go out on a limb without their team supporting them. As they become more complex and more costly, they worry if they'll ever even see a return on investment. And so this becomes something that even the grizzled decision makers out there are kind of afraid to do. Not necessarily afraid, I guess, but they don't want to, again, go out on a limb. Widespread support of your solution will really make the decision maker's job a bit easier. Maybe you've seen it. You spent weeks and weeks cultivating discovery with a key decision maker, revealing their pain point, addressing the pain point, negotiating a price or a position, services, and then nothing. You don't hear from them. There's no decision. Or you hear back, instead they put it on hold. They put the decision on hold. A lot of times this is because there's no consensus. They're kind of out there on their own in making this decision. So it's no longer just about investing the energy it takes to get in to see the decision makers. You have to spend the time to really understand all the stakeholders so you can leverage their support for a sale overall. I see this as good news. You don't necessarily always have to get to that C-level executive for a decision. You can leverage the relationship of his or her employees to be introduced to him eventually. And usually at that point, you've already created some advocacy within the organization that makes the introduction more meaningful. Secondly, discovery fatigue really can cause us. So this is what we call this, the discovery fatigue. To validate our ROI, when we get to the solution stage, we ask a whole lot of questions, right? Dozens of probing questions to identify their pain, to find out their revenues, all kinds of things that are going on. As companies tend to get more done with fewer people, our need to define through discovery puts a burden on these prospects. Discovery really requires an enormous commitment on their part. There's conference calls, there's usually maybe a couple of presentations, there's discussion about the scope, the overall pricing, the revenues, all kinds of discussions that are happening. They have to invest an enormous amount of time with you, and many times they involve other stakeholders on their team before you ever get to see value or even a hint of a solution. So they're rolling the dice with their coworker relationships that your solution will even be viable. They don't even know at that point. It's a leap of faith. And with their reputation on the line, prospects are becoming more and more reluctant to take this on by themselves. Customers demand customization. Not to be too redundant there, but the more complex the solutions, the more customers want to customize their solution, right? No one wants to be part of a cookie cutter solution. Everyone is different, everyone's unique. You and I know that's not true necessarily, but that's really how everyone feels. So we have to at least provide the perception of customized solutions. And really what it comes down to is customers don't know what they need to know to make the decision. This isn't new, right? That's why we ask all those questions, to help them identify their pain point, identify where they have a need, those same questions that really could lead to discovery fatigue. But as solutions become more complex, what happens is that they don't even know that they could potentially have a problem. Many companies still plan their year, their strategy is, we'll do it the way we've always done it. That's the strategy that drives so many companies, with really very little insight into what's happening in their industry, or sometimes even within their own company. So as a result, they don't know how to buy. I mean, it's not that they lack the basic know-how of buying a complex solution, but standard purchasing processes and protocols break down when every solution is unique, touching different parts of the organization, different people. This is, as you can kind of see, this is also the key to eliminating the RFP process that we all hate so much. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. But you have to help customers navigate the complexity of your solution, of all solutions, really, of the issues that are facing them. Customers are struggling to buy our solutions as much as we are to sell them. Many times their greatest need is to figure out what it is that they need. And you have to lead them there. So this is the basis behind storage selling. So we'll talk a little bit about the process. So when I say that customers don't care about your products or services, really it's that they don't have a good reason to care. They sort your products and services into those neat little boxes that I talked about, those little cubby holes in their brain, and it's usually defined by the industry. So for example, let's say that you receive a call today from someone telling you they can offer a great deal on homeowners insurance, right? Just you personally. We put that person in a box, right? We've established a perception of what that person is like. We've determined that I already have insurance, so I really don't need to take the time or energy to shop new insurance, right? And to switch everything is kind of a hassle. So a few years ago, we had some terrible tornadoes come through St. Louis. They did some damage throughout the area, most notably near the St. Louis airport, which made the national news. A few days later, I got a call from an insurance person. He's very pleasant and politely asked, if I'm happy with my homeowner's policy. I, of course, tell him, oh, I'm good. I put him in that cubby hole, right? Our insurance policy is a good one. We're with a good company. We already have a broker. He shops the pricing for us from time to time, et cetera, et cetera. So then he asked if I was affected by the recent tornadoes. I wasn't. But then he proceeds to tell me about how the insurance industry has changed in the Midwest and other disaster areas, but primarily in our area. Because of all the hail damage claims paid in recent years, many of the insurance companies who work in the Midwest have changed their roof deductible policy. Not the deductible for fire or the catastrophe, just the roof. I personally carry a $2,500 deductible. He asked if I knew that my roof deductible may actually be a percentage of the full value of my home, rather than just the $2,500. You know, I was skeptical. I was like, no, there's no way. That's no way. So, you know, he patiently waited on the phone while I pulled our policy, and he directed me to the language, and sure enough, the policy had been changed on my last renewal. I had never been alerted by my insurance broker. In fact, my insurance broker probably just, you know, put it in a file and didn't think that anything had changed either. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But I had never been alerted by the insurance company. It just showed up with my renewal documents that I immediately filed away and forgot about. So now I'm going to ask all of you, how sure are you about your own homeowners policy? I'm guessing most of you will check your policy in the next few days. You probably go, "What? This is crazy. I've never heard of this." Maybe some of you have. Maybe you have some great insurance folks. I know I've got Paul on the phone, so I know he's a great insurance guy. But because I've taught you something that you didn't know, just like he did for me, and because he taught me something I didn't know, I trusted him. And we've all been in sales long enough to know that we only buy from those people or those brands that we trust, right? So he became my broker for several years until health reasons resulted in his retirement. Before that, though, he picked up our business policies, my cars, my home, the policies for rental properties, our commercial building, a lot of the things that were associated with our business as well. So I just shared with you the first step in story selling. I told you a story that revealed an insight, something that you may not have known. Better yet, I told it to you by sharing an experience. I could have loaded this webinar with facts and figures and charts and graphs about why story selling works. But people don't remember facts and figures. They remember stories. So imagine if you delivered an insight to your prospect. In the world of selling, there are really only two important insights, right? Especially in B2B sales, but those that prevent mistakes or those that reduce or eliminate lost opportunities, right? We've been trained to lead with our benefits. That's how we've always marketed and how we've always sold. We make sure the customer understands how we could potentially make their life easier. So when we're asked what we do, we say something to the effect of, well, we train internal employee skills and change leadership behaviors to create sustainable customer-focused organizations. Well, so does our competitor. I've done nothing to make the story more compelling in the mind of my prospect. I've told them just enough that they can comfortably push me back into that neat little box, the one that I share with all of my competitors. He sells managed hosting, or her company does industrial construction. Those kind of neat little boxes that are very nondescriptive. So, but overall, we don't want our prospects to be comfortable. We want to make sure that they're thinking that we want to make sure that we're always thinking in terms of our customer success. The truth may not be comfortable. Instead of leading with our benefits, we might instead lead our prospects to our benefits by building a compelling story with them. And the only, making us the only obvious conclusion to this story. So the catch here is that you cannot begin to sell your solution too soon. As customers, we become inundated with constant sales messages through dozens of channels. As a result, we develop a natural tendency to shut down as soon as we feel like we're being sold, right? So what happens when our customer pushes us back into that neat little box? They think to themselves, "That's great. I like your ideas, but now I know the problem. I'm going to look for other ideas." I mean, it's our natural tendency to shop around. And this is how the RFP process starts. They want to hear other ideas from other vendors. However, if you build a story that leads to your solution instead of with your solution, RFPs become a thing of the past. Because in their perception, you provide the only solution to this issue. RFP processes are RFP processes are built to attempt to compare apples to apples to get the best possible value, right? However, if you always have an orange, there'll be no need really to fit you into an RFP process. I mean, eventually there'll be an RFP process for your solution, the one that you provide. But until then, you'll be providing information that positions you outside their little box. You can make your money while they're trying to figure out a way to standardize your solution. But by then, you'll have moved on to the next new insight and the next new solution, effectively keeping you out of the RFP process. So I shared with you my insurance story that potentially saved me thousands of dollars. And now you're probably interested enough that if you didn't know it already, you may go home and check your own policy, right? I've educated you using a story. So it's really, that's kind of the first step toward building a solution. You know what the base reality is and how the world works, but I've just provided you with an insight that teaches you about potential pitfalls. So here are the other steps to the story selling process. We start with our base reality. I'll explain these here in a moment, but then we talk about our inciting insight. We talk about heightening the drama, making a connection, and then the revelation, which then leads to the resolution and creates a new customer. So if you notice, this actually kind of is built like a lot of our favorite thriller novels or movies, right? We start with the base reality. All stories start with it. Life going on just like it's supposed to, right? In the sales setting, this is where you share anecdotes about other companies that you've encountered within their industry. These stories really should capture some of the challenges that could be of concern to this prospect. You might tell a story about a company similar to your prospect's company that illustrates a challenge your prospect may find compelling as well. However, the story should end something like this. We've worked with a number of companies similar to yours. We've seen some reoccurring challenges that they're facing. Is this what you're seeing too, or do you have other unique challenges? So what we've done here is we've formed a hypothesis. In fact, if you're familiar with the challenge sales process, this is called hypothesis-based selling. Rather than asking those endless open-ended questions about their needs that could possibly lead to discovery fatigue, you lead with your knowledge of their industry based on your research and your experiences. While these stories should seem very casual and informative, they're actually well scripted by your marketing group or your marketing person. In story selling, marketing takes on a slightly different role than you may currently be using. In story selling, marketing's primary role is to understand each customer segment, what's important to each segment, what their obstacles may be, and then structure and script the stories to be used by the sales team. There's a process we use to help our customers kind of develop this library of stories, but I'm not going to get off topic here. If you're interested in learning more about it, how to structure your marketing, please feel free to contact us. But at this point, many of you might be thinking, so how can I know more about their business than they do? Well, the key is you don't have to. You don't have to know more about their business. You only have to know about the part of their business that leads to your solution. Excuse me. So then we have our inciting incident. In any good story, the base reality is always interrupted by the inciting incident, right? A threat is introduced. A mistake is made in the lab. There's a curious murder, a car crash, an alien race arrives, whatever. The threat arises, right? In story selling, we call this the inciting insight. Built on these challenges that they've just agreed to in our initial base reality conversation, this is where you introduce them to a potential threat. You tell them stories about the potential threat and how it's affected companies that you know about. You connect these challenges to either a bigger potential mistake or a bigger potential opportunity than they ever realized they had. This, by the way, is usually the insight you use to kind of engage them at first. This is the insurance broker telling me about the potential changes to my insurance policy. So here's the catch, though. If they enthusiastically agree with you, you haven't provided them with a valuable enough insight. If they say something to the effect of, "Wow, I never thought of that," or "I didn't know that," then you've hit it. Or in my case with the insurance, I was like, "Oh, come on, that can't be true." I was skeptical, but obviously they hit it. So this is important because if you miss the correct insight, you're not providing them a value that's going to differentiate you from your competitors. Worse yet, as we discussed earlier, a lack of differentiation allows them to begin to think of other possible solutions, and you've lost the opportunity to skew their thinking toward your solution. excuse me, it's kind of like failing to get ahead of that RFP that we've talked about. You're simply responding to their needs rather than defining them. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it puts you in a price war where you really have no control over whether they're comparing your oranges to your competitors' apples, right? You could still win the business, but the key is to kind of try to get away from this RFP process by defining a unique challenge that you have the only unique solution to. So the third part of this is heightening the suspense. So this is where we get to bring out all of our charts and graphs. You know, in a story, the hero is at this point an unwitting or unwilling player in this new reality that's changed, right? This is your prospect. Slowly you have to heighten the danger, make the odds look slimmer, and really kind of give them a feeling that time is running out. So this is a different way of thinking, because when we think about relationship selling, our goal is always to make the customer happy, right? In this particular type of format, you're actually kind of making the customer squirm. So they're starting to feel a little uncomfortable because they didn't know this. So now it's time for some data. We get our charts, our graphs, our studies from others, the studies that we've done, stories that we have, anything that quantifies the cost of the problem or the size of the potential opportunity that they have overlooked. This is a numbers-driven rationale for why they should look at their business differently. This data should actually make them begin to squirm, like I said. It doesn't have to be an in-depth analysis. You know, remember, my insurance broker incited me to do this stage himself. He waited patiently on the phone while I went and got my policy out and took a look at it myself. So many organizations have some sort of calculation as well that you use to demonstrate your return on investment, the return on investment of buying your solution, right? So we encourage you also to create a new calculation that demonstrates that ROI of solving the challenge that you've just outlined in your story versus talking about your solution. So what is it going to cost for them if they make this mistake or miss this opportunity? So you cannot show really at this point how your solution economically solves a challenge, because you really haven't convinced them the challenge is worth solving, right? Which brings up a good point. At this time, it's kind of tempting at this stage to trot out our benefits and start talking about how we address those. But try to restrain the impulse, because we've heightened their anxiety at this point, but we really haven't reached that critical point of no return in the process. And that's what we call the connection. Or we also refer to it as the emotional connection. So numerous studies over the past several years have demonstrated that decisions are made emotionally then justified rationally after the fact. Many of the decisions we make are based on our initial reaction to the insight that we've talked about, but we have to understand the facts and figures to justify it. A few years ago, neuroscientist Antonio Damasio made a groundbreaking discovery. He studied people with damage in the part of the brain where emotions are generated. He found that they seemed normal, except that they were not able to feel emotion. But they all had something really peculiar in common. They couldn't make decisions. They could describe what they should be doing in logical terms, but they found it really difficult to make even simple decisions such as what to eat. So this really kind of launched the industry that we work in, this kind of neuroeconomics, understanding the brain's role in buying, selling, and engagement decisions. So the connection is where we make certain our hero or our prospect sees themselves in the story. To do this, we have to make it an emotional impact. And this is where a lot of the sales and marketing programs fail. The traditional approach is, if a PowerPoint presentation didn't get me there, then I'll send a white paper. If the white paper doesn't work, I'll send something else. But it's really more of the same, and it doesn't get us over the why we're different hump. The problem isn't that we failed to make a logical presentation. The problem is that we failed to make an emotional connection. It's not that they don't believe our story, it's just that they don't see it as their story. So you need to get them to internalize what you're telling them. Emotional connection isn't about the numbers, it's about the narrative. You've got to paint a picture of how other companies, just like the customer's company, went down this similar painful path by engaging in behavior that the customer will immediately recognize as typical of their company. They start to see, oh yeah, that's how we do things, and boy, this resulted in issues for this other company. So However, you can't really kind of make that connection by lumping the prospect into a group. You always have to remember that everyone thinks that they're unique. And so we have to work toward that. So your connection story starts out something like, I understand your company is unique, but let me give you a sense of how you've seen these situations roll out in companies similar to yours. Again, that kind of that same lead-in. Then what you say next really has to feel immediately familiar for this to work. This is very similar to the story where we love it, the point in the story where things have really gotten worse for our hero. What are they going to do? You have to create an emotional connection between the story you're telling and the pain your prospect feels every day inside their own company. So you can see why this process really starts with acquiring a deep understanding of your prospect before the sales call, not just during it. It takes practice, and it takes mentoring using real life situations. That's why our trainings aren't just the learning events, the day that we do the training, but they also include, it's not enough to tell people how to do it. Ours include unlimited coaching, so that when a salesperson reaches this point, they need some help kind of brainstorming how do I create this emotional connection. Then we provide, it's an unlimited coaching type of situation where they can contact and work through this. Because this is kind of the key to the process. So what happens when things reach a critical juncture in the story, right? The hero leverages a hidden strength to overcome, right? In story selling, the solution, this strength that they have is your solution, right? Your solution is that strength. But we can't jump to our solution just yet because it's not time to launch into the laundry list of why we're better. You still have to convince them. You have to convince them of the solution, that these are the steps that they need to take. You take them point by point through a review of the specific capabilities they would need to have in order to make good on this fear of missing this opportunity or avoiding a mistake that you just convinced them that they're facing, right? Again, at this stage, it's tempting to launch into a review of how we can help. Here's how we do it, but not just yet. Again, at this point, it's about the solution, not the supplier. We don't want them to automatically turn on their sales radar and shut us down. This is about, at this point, it's really about how much better life would be if they simply act differently. So before they buy our solution, they have to buy the solution, which really brings us to the final stage, the resolution, which is your solution. So every story has a resolution. The resolution to your hero or your prospect story is your solution. They've already bought into acting differently. Now you just have to show them how to act differently and why your solution is the best way to equip them to act differently. You do this by simply laying out the steps you would take to deliver on that solution they agreed to in that last step. You share your experiences. If your competition is still in the running at this point, then you've either failed to identify capabilities that are truly unique or you failed to lead them as convincingly as you hope. And again, that's kind of why we offer ongoing coaching. It takes practice, but if you stay the course, it does begin to work. So recently we worked with an organization as a pilot program. By the way, if you're interested in being part of a pilot program after I describe it, please contact us. We'd love to have more participants. It helps us build our own stories. So we launched a pilot program. We split the sales team into two, and we balanced the teams. So both teams had top performers and laggards. They had salespeople with experience and newbies. For one team, we allowed them to follow their current system. However, they systematically laid out the benefits of their solutions backed by bulletproof facts, case studies, reason, logic, etc. This team believed that there's absolutely no way that the other person could say no to their perfectly constructed argument, right? When we reviewed the materials on the surface, any other decision would be impossible because there really wasn't any other logical solution or answer. They had led with their strengths. The other team layered our story selling process over their current practices. So they built a compelling story before getting to the solution. Those logical facts and figures that the other team had laid out, they laid out as well, but only after they had defined the challenge the prospect could be facing, not necessarily defined the facts and figures about their solution. And even at this point, this was seen by prospects as helping, not selling. By the way, I probably should have told you that we actually went back and we interviewed some of the customers in this pilot program to make sure that we understood what they were, what the decision-making process was like. So the second team led to their solution by building a compelling story. Excuse me. The success was really exciting. The new business success rate for the second team was nearly 40% better than the first team. This was by no means a scientific study, of course, but when we interviewed these new customers later, we asked questions around why they selected our client. They said things like, well, I feel like they really know our industry, or I feel like they really know our business, or I was comfortable my rep understood our needs. It was the qualifiers that we found interesting, though. Words like comfortable define an emotional connection, right? Better yet, getting organizational consensus overall was easier because of statements like "we trust their experience." If we trust their experience, then we're gonna pass them through the system and introduce them internally. It's important to note, however, that the incremental sales from their current customers was much closer. So really only about a 25% difference. So these were the customers they had relationships with. However, those incremental sales for our second team, the one that used the story selling, could actually be tracked directly to specific tactics. And it allowed those tactics then to be tweaked and strengthened with each subsequent contact with a new prospect. So it might be a bit strong when we say relationship selling is dead. It's probably more accurate to say relationship selling must adapt. With no differentiation, your clients or even your current relationships often see you as a provider of a certain service, not a partner in problem solving. After all, I mean, this has happened to me, but how many of you have ever been surprised at one point or another to find out that a long-term customer didn't even realize that you offered a different service that they could have benefited from? This is because you've been put into this kind of neat little box, and we have to break you out of that. And even when they refer you to others, they often define you in kind of undifferentiated terms that lumps you in with your competitors. Just like I did with the insurance broker who called. This is an insurance broker. I already have insurance. I don't need the hassle of changing, that kind of thing. But this is because, relationship selling is based on not rocking the boat. Relationship sellers are focused on making their prospects happy. I mentioned that earlier. Story sellers are focused on making their customers successful. And they create that success sometimes by challenging that, that's the way everyone does it, or that's the way we've always done it mindset. It's human nature to reduce tension rather than increase it. So relationship sellers will often hang out in that kind of no decision gray area just to avoid starting or ending a positive meeting on a challenging note where they've challenged the prospect. However, using these story selling techniques, you can really kind of begin to strengthen your current relationships as well. You provide insights and opportunities before they even recognize it. You can begin to provide them new ways to look at their business and really kind of create these raving referral fans versus just, they do industrial construction or whatever. They define you as a partner who provides unique insights to their business and their industry instead of just a vendor that provides a product or a service. So let's look back at this process and how this looks. Again, it starts with the base reality. Everything's going along. This is what the industry is like. However, we have our inciting insight. This is something that we know about the industry that our prospect may not know. We heighten the suspense by showing them how expensive this could be for them. We create a connection, that emotional connection, by placing them in the story, giving them an opportunity to think of themselves as in this story. And then, we have the revelation and the resolution, which eventually leads to the customer and them buying our solution. Note that it used to be that in the marketing or in the sales funnel, marketing fed leads into the top of this funnel. However, currently the marketing kind of dumps the leads into the lead generation, which then kind of starts to work through the sales funnel. There are ways to leverage these inciting insights into your marketing that actually helps qualify your leads rather than just generating prospects overall. So let's talk about how do you build your stories. So we start at the end. We start with your solution. To successfully build a compelling story, you have to know what the story is building to, right? you've got to have the clarity and agreement across your organization around the unique benefits that only you can offer your customers. So before we get into the steps, I cannot stress enough how important it is that you understand your customers. A lot of companies continue to, for example, to segment their targets into industries or into geographic areas or into those kinds of those traditional segments, right? We encourage our clients to look at their customers' segments based on their needs. So whether or not this group of customers are people who only need a certain solution from us, whereas this group over here have a much greater need for a solution and a product and a lot of other kind of layered services over that, right? So you look at segmenting based on the need, but it really requires talking to a sample set of each segment, understanding their need, their own processes, the obstacles they face, and more. You can contact us. We can recommend ways to get more in-depth intelligence on all of your target segments, on the industries that they reside in, and those so you can kind of develop those inciting insights. So, like I said, step one: start at the end. The most memorable books and stories, movies, even jokes have that kind of unexpected twist at the end, right? I recently saw the movie Maleficent. I love the Disney movies. They simply really expected this to be a live-action retelling of the old Sleeping Beauty. I was totally wrong. The twist at the end caught me by surprise. It was very memorable. I recommend it to everyone. That's what great stories do. So we start at the end, but we don't start with your obvious benefits, the ones that your competitors share, right? We start with those benefits that you offer that your customers currently underappreciate. I know it seems really counterintuitive not to start with the product or service you're known for, but your competitors are also known for it, and you really forego the opportunity to challenge your customers' thinking, the trait that they really value more than anything in a sales rep. Remember, we're selling the experience here, not the product. So now that we've started at the end, we go back and we need our aha moment, right? We need to go back to step 2 of our story selling process and uncover what that inciting insight is. To get there, we start with the unique benefits that we've identified in step 1, and then ask ourselves, why don't my customers value those benefits already? What is it about how they view their old world that precludes them from appreciating those benefits as much as we think? They either should or could. They should. Really, that's the view that we need to take. So if we put it all together, we really get what's currently costing our prospects more money than they realize that only we can help them fix. And that's where we get our inciting insight. And it takes a little bit of work and brainstorming to kind of come up with that. And then step 3 is to flesh out the rest of the story. The best way to do this is with your own actual case studies or the issues that you've seen other prospects experience and how they were unable to correct their ship because they didn't hire you, right? You can share those experiences. However, remember that even if you're adept at blocking out your story and finding those effective inciting insights, the process only works if you find the connection, that emotional connection that allows them to place their own experiences with possibility of failure that you've outlined, right? The emotional connection between the story you're telling and the pain your prospect feels every day inside their own company. So who does this? Marketing really takes on a whole new role. Your marketing team should become adept at understanding your customer segments, identifying and researching inciting insights, and scripting the stories that define the process. Your sales team is the delivery vehicle. Successful implementation of the story selling process really depends on how your organization works and the individual skills of your sales team. In fact, some of our clients choose to simply, to simplify the process for their sales team into 3 key elements. It really takes the pressure off their sales team and redistributes the responsibility for the steps across the sales, marketing, and management. So they're not doing the whole process. Some of it's being done as an organizational effort. Some of it's being done by marketing. It's really the same journey, but it's an easier process for reps, especially those that are traditionally accustomed to leading with rather than leading to. We offer a free assessment for your organization, your sales team. If you're interested, contact us. Also, story story selling works well as a standalone sales process or as a complementary process to many of the other more traditional systems out there, like Sandler or suspense selling. So if you need assistance understanding how this process works with more traditional systems, just let me know that as well. So that's the webinar for today. I'm not sure if don't see any questions on my board. Brian, what do you have there?
Hey, Jeff. Yeah, we've had a few that have come in, and I'll go ahead and kind of run through those for you, if that's all right.
Okay.
This first one here I think is pretty relevant. You mentioned that marketing takes on a new role. Can you discuss how that's different from the marketing that we're currently doing?
Okay, so we're actually planning on exploring this more in our next webinar. So feel free to stop by that. In fact, I'll just put that up there. But story selling is really more than just a marketing function. It's more than just a sales function. It's an organizational capability, right? The story comes from the entire organization. Marketing cannot be your sole delivery vehicle for your stories. It's too complex, and you don't know really who happens to be reading it at the time, whether it's falling on deaf ears, right? If you're using your marketing to attempt to sell, as always, you'll fail. Marketing's job really is to package the story into a usable, functional method for sales delivery. Marketing's role is to become the voice of the customer within the organization, rather than simply implementing tactics like running ads or printing a brochure or managing your social media or search engine optimization. They really have to understand goals, motivations, the obstacles of customer segments. They should take responsibility for identifying and researching those inciting insights that really matter to these customers, and then finding or scripting the corresponding stories that lead to your organization's solution. Now, we're not suggesting that you create a script and a salesperson reads from that script. They just need to familiarize themselves with the story. That's what's great about stories, is that once you familiarize yourself with them, it's a great story, so you like to share it, right? But this process also kind of blurs the responsibility. Where marketing has often created and delivered the messaging. Now we encourage sales to actually deliver parts of the story, so they can begin to take kind of the role of the storyteller in the process. So anyway, a good way to utilize marketing is to deliver content on a variety of inciting insights. So a lot of these insights that we've provided, much like the insurance salesman asking me if I knew about this change in policy, these are things that can be delivered as content in your marketing that when you write knowledgibly about these issues facing the industries of your various segmented audiences, eventually those prospects will identify those same behaviors in their own company and recognize the need for a change. We have a full process for delivering this more effective marketing to support the sales team, but again, it's beyond the scope of this webinar, so we've kind of moved it to another one.
Right. Okay. Great. And as a reminder, everybody, if you do have any questions, there's a question panel there right on the GoToWebinar control panel that you can use, and we'll address those as they come up. Here's another one, kind of general. Can you give us an example of how this overlays a traditional sales process?
Sure. So I'll look at the Sandler steps as an example. And again, this is kind of very basic based on my memory of my Sandler training. But they have the various steps. They have the compartment of the Sandler submarine, if you've ever been through that. But if you think of their steps in the bonding and rapport compartment of that submarine, you, the salesperson, it's time for you to develop a positive relationship with the prospect. And so in a way, it ensures that you lead the sales process and can effectively communicate with the prospect, right? Well, nothing leads the process like educating your prospect on something they never even realize. So this is a very powerful. A lot of times when salespeople see bonding and rapport, they think in terms of, well, I gotta be, become this guy's friend or this woman's friend, and that's really not the case. You need to show them that you can be part of their success, right? Sandler also, I think their next step was the upfront contracts compartment. This, I think, gives you the confidence that both you and the prospect will understand each step in the process, right? It'll happen at every interaction. It kind of clears the deck so that everybody has the same expectation. This is a great step. establishing expectations is always beneficial. While we don't have a specific stage for this, we do highly recommend it. It's a great way. Like I said, there are hybrids here that can work for your sales process. Just establish what they are and make sure everyone is kind of on the same wavelength. So then I think you get to the point of Sandler's core compartments, the pain, the budgeting, decision. In story selling, we address these just in a slightly different method. So in that kind of core, rather than really trying to uncover a pain through a series of questions and risking that discovery fatigue that we talked about, we suggest proposing a hypothesis based on inciting insights that are important to your target, and because they may not know these things. Story selling also focuses on convincing the prospects they may be missing opportunities or their potential mistakes and helping them decide how they can avoid these. You get consensus on the solution before you decide on your solutions. But, of course, it's all leading up to your solution. And then finally, Sandler, I think, includes a fulfillment process which revisits the expectations and the post-sell. These are perfectly excellent ways to follow up story selling. In fulfillment, you prioritize the issues most important to them. This can be really effective after you've gotten consensus on the solution. It works to help you define with them the reasons the solution will work, right, before we get to our solution. And the same with the post-sale, identifying any kind of compromises that you made along the way to make certain that they won't cause buyer's remorse is really an excellent addition to the revelation phase of story selling. Obviously, this example is only relevant if your entire team is actually following the Sandler system. We found when we do our initial assessments, the teams are often using hybrids, and sometimes not everybody on the team is following the same process.
Okay, great. We got a few more minutes here. We have time for maybe a few more. Here's one. You had mentioned that consensus was one of the keys to success. How do you get consensus in a multi-layered organization?
We recommend the same steps we recommend for obtaining referrals. First of all, don't ask your initial contact to sell your solution. That's disaster. They can't do it like you can. So instead, ask them to introduce you to other people in your organization. Assure them that you won't attempt to sell their coworkers or their boss anything. You simply want to create a network within the organization so you can share these same insights about the industry with those folks and help the company define areas where opportunities may lie or where there may be hidden potential mistakes.
Okay. Rob had one here. It's very specific, but he wants to know how do you get people to return your voicemails? Do you have any tips on how?
Yeah, that's a challenge that I think a lot of salespeople face. I'll just talk about personal experience. I never leave voicemails. I reach out to the person. If I don't get them, then I put them in my CRM as a call next, and I call them again. However, there are ways to. I think that a lot of these same processes could work. To leave if that insurance person had called me and left that same message about, hey, did you realize that you may have a policy that has this crazy new deductible? That would have been very effective at getting me, to consider a call back. However, there could be a trap there as well, because while I may have learned something, I may not call them back. I may call my current agent back, and then we've lost the opportunity to kind of start to lead them toward our solution, right?
I see. Okay. Here's one from Cassie, and she mentions, you talked about customization being very important, but she says sometimes that she finds that offering too many options can be confusing for the customer. Is there any way to find like a good balance between offering that customization and having just too many options?
Yeah, well, we typically only offer 3 options. We don't go too in depth on the options. So, and a good rule of thumb is 3. We kind of think in threes, right? And so typically we'll stay with 3 options, and usually there are 3 pricing options. achieved at different time, at different paces. Our most expensive option obviously is the fastest option. It gets them to that solution much quicker. The least expensive either takes an amount of training or time out of the solution, or they don't get as many bells and whistles on their product or whatever, but it still achieves the goal. So really what we want to do is build that value across those three options. But when we talk about customization, really what we're looking at is we have kind of every business has standardized solutions. I mean, we have a product that we offer, right? And what they're looking for is really the idea that we've taken a product that works really well and we've adapted it to the unique needs of their organization. So, for example, if we were to do this story selling training within an organization, we would actually look at the sales team. If the sales team was made up of several people who had very little experience, then we would adapt this solution to meet those needs, which probably would require more online, training, more training over the phone, more brainstorming, more walking through the various processes. Whereas if the team was more experienced, they probably could do a lot of the steps themselves, maybe with a little bit of help on the connection section of this. So, our options are always, they are customized, but they all do fall back into to the overall success of the system itself.
Absolutely. Okay. We got just a couple more minutes. I'm gonna try and get one more in here. This one's interesting. It's kind of general, but which segment of the sales funnel would you consider to be the most crucial? Is there one that's
the connection. And the reason I say that is because that's where it all turns. I mean, that's where they can start to see the same behaviors in their company that we've just described in our story. The inciting insight is also is very important because that's what gets the attention, right? That's what differentiates us. That's what pulls us out of that tiny little box that they've placed us in and makes us something different. But it's the connection that really leads us back onto the road of now we're headed toward our solution because they feel the pain. That's it's very similar to the pain point that the Sandler system talks about, for example.
Excellent. We're right here at the end of the hour. Jeff, I want to thank you for a great presentation. I'd like to also thank everybody for their time today. I'd also like to remind you about the follow-up webinar that's going to be coming up on August 13th. Jeff will be leading the webinar entitled How Company Culture Drives Effective Marketing. And this webinar expands on today's webinar, defining how a simple shift of marketing focus can differentiate your organization in a competitive and multi-channel world. And as you see on the screen there, you'll learn how you can avoid some common marketing mistakes, turn your customers' buying habits into a competitive differentiation, implement more effective marketing using less expensive media channels, turn every employee into a sales and marketing practitioner, and create substantial value leading to stronger pricing and profitability. So we hope you'll join us for that, and you can sign up for that on mosconigroup.com.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.